Beyond the IMF, however, we have to look for fundamental solutions to some of our problems. As our foreign exchange reserves have declined, the depreciation of the cedi, as I have noted, has accelerated. A major source of cedi depreciation has been the demand for foreign exchange to finance the import of oil products. In fact, our import of oil products is around $3 billion annually. Persistent cedi depreciation increases the cost of living, with higher prices for fuel, transportation, utilities, food, and so on. Many governments, including ours, are facing a very difficult economic crisis that requires solutions that must come out of the box. How do we stop the depreciation? How do we stop the persistent increases in the prices of fuel and utility? We have been thinking about this long and hard. When you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, the challenge that we face is a limited access to foreign exchange, as our foreign exchange reserves have depleted and the demand has not fallen, but the demand has been relatively steady for that lower foreign exchange reserves. And so the demand exceeds the supply, and then you have depreciation. So the thinking that we said, okay, how do we get in more foreign exchange reserves for the country to be able to stem this gap between the demand and the supply? One of the things that occurred to us and to me was, why aren't we able to accumulate reserves in terms of gold? We have focused on accumulating reserves over the years in terms of US dollars and other currencies. But gold is a foreign exchange reserve. And the unique feature of gold is that we are endowed with gold. We produce gold in Ghana, which means you don't have to export gold to earn that foreign exchange. You have to export cocoa, you have to export timber and other goods, foods and so on, to earn the foreign exchange. With gold, immediately you dig it up, it is foreign exchange. So you are essentially digging up foreign exchange. So I said, let me check how much gold we have accumulated in Ghana thus far. And when you look at the data between independence and 2021, we had accumulated just 8 tons of gold. 8 tons. We are one of the largest gold-producing countries in the world. But we had accumulated 8 tons. When I looked at the United States, they have over 8,000 tons. The IMF, many other countries in Europe are dealing with gold reserves of over 2,000 tons. And we have 8 tons of gold. We proceeded to say the Bank of Ghana, we suggested to the central bank to begin a gold purchase program, systematically to build up our reserves in gold. And the gold program started last year, and it is proceeding quite well. But to address this fundamental challenge that we all face of the persistent depreciation and its impact on fuel, in utility prices, food, and so on, government has opted to implement a policy of using our gold to buy oil products. That is something new, and it is the barter of sustainably mined gold for oil. And this is one of the most important economic policy changes in Ghana since independence. If we implement it as we have envisioned, it will fundamentally change our balance of payments and significantly reduce the persistent depreciation of our currency with its associated increases in fuel, electricity, water, transport, and food prices. Why would it stop these persistent increases in fuel, water, and food prices? It is very simple. This is because the exchange rate, whether you are looking at the spot exchange rate or the forward exchange rate, will no longer directly enter the formula for the determination of fuel or utility prices once we implement this, because the purchases of fuel and for transport and utility is going to be in cedis. It's not going to be in dollars. So because you're buying that fuel with gold, that is where the exchange takes place. But once you sell that fuel, you sell it in cedis. And then the Bank of Ghana uses those cedis to buy more gold and buy the oil, you sell it, and then it goes around in that way. But essentially, you are taking the exchange rate out of the equation. Today, our fuel prices are being priced at an exchange rate, a forward exchange rate of 19 cedis to the US dollar. Today, what we are paying at the pump is being priced at 19 cedis to the US dollar. So you can imagine when you price without the exchange rate in the formula, which is what is going to happen. We've already done some simulations. Then you will see that the prices of fuel will come down. And similarly, for PURC, if the exchange rate doesn't enter the equation, which it shouldn't because the transactions will be in cedis, similarly, then electricity tariffs will also have to come down. Because what you are now going to see, because one of the biggest, when you look at what drives fuel price increases, what drives electricity price increases, and therefore the cost of doing business, it's fundamentally the exchange rate. Major driver of these price increases. So if you are able to have a handle on the exchange rate movement, you are able to lower the depreciation of the currency at the same time as you lower this. And you are going to lower the depreciation of the currency because instead of the oil importers, especially the BDCs, going to the Bank of Ghana's window every few weeks to ask for foreign exchange to import oil, that one goes away. So we are saving $3 billion annually from the lack of demand from the Bank of Ghana for the foreign exchange. So that reduces the pressure on the cedi immediately. And therefore you will see much slower depreciation of the currency. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, since we announced this, I put this out on my Facebook, there's been a lot of discussion with the BBC, Reuters, Bloomberg, and some misinterpretation. This has been misinterpreted as Ghana being against the use of US dollars in international transactions. This really is not the case. We are not on any mission against the use of US dollars in international transactions. Far from it. In fact, we want to accumulate more US dollars in our reserves. But we have a specific issue to deal with oil imports and the nexus between those oil imports and the prices of fuel and transport and food and utilities. And that is essentially what we are targeting, to exchange our gold for the oil, take that path, and therefore insulate the domestic economy, domestic industry from the persistent depreciation that we see in the currency that affects the cost of doing business and the cost of living. So that is hopefully cleared.